The shifts at the memory care facility are always quiet, but there's a different kind of silence that haunts the third floor after midnight. That's where I work, and that's where I met Mr. Brennan. Every single night, like clockwork, at precisely 2:17 a.m., he wakes up, not with the usual groggy confusion of dementia, but with a terrifying, piercing clarity. His eyes, usually clouded and distant, lock onto mine, and he grabs my arm. His voice is a desperate whisper. They're stealing it. They come when you're not looking, and they take it. Piece by piece. He'd point to his head, his knuckles white. It's not just fading. It's being stolen. The first few times I'd just offer him some water, reassure him it was just a bad dream. But the consistency of it, 2:17 a.m., every night. It started to feel less like a symptom and more like a warning. His frantic words began to echo in my own head. One particularly unsettling night after calming him down, I went home and couldn't shake the feeling of dread. On a whim, I pulled out a dusty box from my closet, filled with my old childhood journals. I loved writing as a kid. I documented everything. I started flipping through them, laughing at my old crushes and silly dramas. But then I noticed something strange. There were gaps, big ones. In my journal from when I was 12, 3 entire weeks in July were just gone. The pages were there, but they were blank, not ripped out, just empty. I checked the next journal from when I was 16. A whole month in spring, missing. I never left pages blank. I always wrote something. My heart started pounding. Mr. Brennan's words came rushing back. They take it piece by piece. I had to know more. My off days became consumed by this new obsession. I started digging around the facility, looking for anything out of the ordinary. The place was old, built in the 50s, with a sprawling, forgotten basement. I told my supervisor I was looking for some old inventory records, a plausible enough excuse. Down there, amidst the cobwebs and discarded furniture, I found a locked records room. It took me a few days, but I managed to pick the lock. Inside were rows and rows of metal filing cabinets, covered in a thick layer of dust. They weren't hospital records. They were government files, stamped with seals from the 1960s, and they all had the same title, Project Mnemosyne. My hands trembled as I opened the first folder. The files detailed a series of clandestine experiments. The goal? To isolate and extract specific memories from human subjects. The early reports were crude, filled with failures and unsettling side effects. But as the years progressed, the methods became more refined, more precise. The project was supposed to have been shut down in the late 70s, but as I dug deeper, I found more recent files hidden in the back. The letterheads were different, disguised as a private research initiative, but the terminology, the methods. It was the same project. It never stopped. They had just moved it, hidden it in plain sight, in a place filled with people whose memories were already fading, a place where missing time and lost moments would be dismissed as symptoms of a disease, a place like the memory care facility. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a hospital. It was a laboratory. The next file I opened had a patient intake form from 20 years ago. The name on it was Sarah Jenkins. The photo stapled to the corner. It was my mother. But that was impossible. My mother left when I was a child. My father always said she just couldn't handle the pressure of a family and ran off. I have no memories of her past the age of 5. Vague, fuzzy images of a woman, humming a lullaby, the scent of lavender. Nothing more. According to this file, she was admitted for early onset memory dysfunction. I checked the current patient roster. There was a Sarah on the second floor, a quiet woman who mostly kept to herself, staring out the window. I had seen her 100 times. I'd given her medication, helped her with her meals. I never made the connection. I ran upstairs, my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. I found her in her room, holding a small, worn-out teddy bear. The same teddy bear I had as a little girl. I called her name, Sarah. She looked up at me, her eyes vacant, a faint, polite smile on her face. There was no recognition. None. She was my mother, and she was a stranger. They had taken her from me. Not just her memories of me, but my memories of her. The missing weeks in my journals, the blank spaces in my childhood. It all made a horrible, sickening sense. I stumbled back to the basement, back to the filing cabinets, my mind reeling. I needed proof, something I could take to the police, to the press, to anyone who would listen. I started frantically pulling out drawers, searching for my own file, because I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it had to be there. And it was. Tucked away in a new-looking folder was a file with my name on it. But inside there was only a single sheet of paper, an intake form dated for next week, and clipped to it a handwritten letter. The handwriting was mine. I recognized the loopy GEs and the way I dotted my I's with little circles. The letter was dated a year ago, a date I have no memory of writing. It read, "If you are reading this, it means they are getting closer. They have been watching you. They did it to Mom, and now they're preparing for you. The blank pages in your journals weren't an accident. They were tests. They're erasing you just like they erased her from your mind. You won't remember writing this. You won't remember finding this. You will walk into your own intake appointment next week, believing it's for a new job orientation. You must get out. You must run. Don't let them take you." As I read the last words, my pager buzzed on my hip. It was a message from the front desk. "Reminder, your final onboarding and medical review is scheduled for next Tuesday at 9 a.m. The letter fluttered from my numb fingers. I looked at the intake form again. The appointment. The one I had been looking forward to, the one that would finalize my promotion. It wasn't a promotion. A cold, creeping fog began to settle over my mind, blurring the edges of my thoughts. The words on the page started to seem unfamiliar. Whose handwriting was this? The panic I felt just moments ago began to dissolve, replaced by a strange, placid calm. I had a big week ahead. I should probably get some rest. I carefully placed the letter back in the file, closed the drawer, and walked out of the basement, leaving the dust to settle once more. I had a feeling I was forgetting something important, but I was sure it would come back to me. It always does. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the shadows of the mind. Let me know in the comments what you think is happening at Project Mnemosyne. Stay curious and stay safe. Ever been so broke you'd do almost anything for cash? That was me, Alex, scrolling through endless job listings. My eyes landed on an ad that seemed too good to be true. A sleep study offering $5,000 for 1 week as participation. The catch? The location was a creepy old hospital, and the lab was in the basement. Desperate, I ignored every red flag screaming in my head and signed up. When I arrived, the air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and something else, something old and unsettling. A man in a crisp white coat, Dr. Reeves, greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He led me down a series of echoing hallways to what he called the lab. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a lab, it was a morgue. Cold, sterile, and lined with gleaming metal tables under harsh fluorescent lights. White tiles covered the floor and walls, amplifying the bone-chilling silence. Dr. Reeves pointed to a gurney in the center of the room. "This will be your bed," he said, his voice flat. He explained the rules. I had to stay in the room from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every night for a week. No phone, no books, just me and the quiet. Easy enough, right? For $5,000 I could sleep anywhere. Or so I thought. The first night was torture. The room was freezing, the kind of cold that seeps right into your bones. I shivered uncontrollably under the thin blanket they provided. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old building, every drip from a distant pipe, sounded like a footstep just outside the door. Then I heard it a scream, faint but sharp and filled with terror. It seemed to come from down the hall. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat up, peering into the darkness. Through the small window in my door, I could see into other identical rooms. And in those rooms, on those metal tables, were still figures covered in white sheets. Bodies. I was trying to sleep in a fully operational morgue. The $5,000 suddenly felt like a pittance. But the door was locked from the outside. There was no way out until morning. The next night I was exhausted, but even more terrified. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, just my imagination running wild in a spooky place. As I lay there, eyes squeezed shut, I heard a faint scraping sound. I opened my eyes and saw a gurney being wheeled past my door by an orderly. On it was a body, but this one wasn't fully covered. An old man's face, pale and waxy, stared blankly at the ceiling. His arm hung limply off the side, his fingers brushing against the tiled floor. That's when the full weight of the situation crashed down on me. This wasn't just a creepy lab. It was an active morgue. I was literally sleeping with the dead. The next morning I confronted Dr. Reeves, demanding to be let go. He just smiled that same cold smile and tapped a clause in the contract I'd signed in my haste. Breach of contract meant I would owe them $10,000. I was trapped. That night, dread was a physical weight on my chest. I lay on my gurney, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Around 3 a.m., a voice, raspy and dry like rustling leaves, whispered right next to my ear. "You're in my spot." I froze, my blood turning to ice. I slowly turned my head. Sitting up on the gurney next to mine was the old man I'd seen the night before. His eyes, cloudy and lifeless, were fixed on me. I wanted to scream, but the sound was caught in my throat. This was impossible. He was dead. I'm sorry, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The corpse tilted its head. "They pay you to be here?" it rasped. I nodded, unable to speak. "How much?" I managed to croak out. $5,000. The corpse let out a dry, rattling laugh. "Not enough. Tell the doctor you want 15. Then we have a deal." The sheer absurdity of negotiating with a dead body was lost on me in that moment of pure terror. The next day, shaking, I told Dr. Reeves I wouldn't stay another night for less than $15,000. To my astonishment, he agreed without a second's hesitation. So I stayed. And every night, it got worse. It started with the old man. He would sit up and talk to me, telling me stories from his life. But soon, he wasn't alone. One by one, the other residents of the morgue started to wake up. Night after night, my small room became crowded with silent, watching figures. They didn't speak like the first one, but they were there. They would stand around my gurney, their cold presence a crushing weight. Sometimes I'd feel a chilling touch on my arm or a cold breath on my neck. I'd wake up in the morning with bruises in the shape of fingerprints on my skin and cold spots in the room that never seemed to warm up. I was living in a nightmare, counting down the minutes until 6 a.m. when the lock would click and I could escape into the light. The exhaustion was unlike anything I had ever known, a soul-deep weariness that sleep could no longer cure. On the final morning, I stumbled out of the morgue, looking like a ghost myself. Dr. Reeves was waiting for me, a check for $15,000 in his hand. He looked at my pale face, the dark circles under my eyes, and the bruises on my arms. He finally dropped the pretense. The study was never about sleep, he said calmly. It was about the interaction between a living consciousness and the residual energy of the recently deceased. We wanted to see if a strong life force could act as a catalyst, an anchor for post-mortem consciousness. I stared at him, horrified. I wasn't a participant, I was bait. He explained that the physical marks, the cold spots, the voices, it was all proof that death wasn't the end. My presence had created a bridge. He called it a scientific breakthrough. I called it a violation. I took the money and ran. I never looked back. But it turns out you can't just run from something like that. The bridge I had become, it stayed open. I left the morgue, but the dead didn't leave me. They follow me now. Silent shadows in the corner of my eye, faint whispers on the wind. They're not malicious, just there. A constant, chilling reminder of my week spent sleeping with the dead. I am a conduit, a doorway between their world and ours. I can never be truly alone again. So next time you see an ad that seems too good to be true, maybe think twice. Some money just isn't worth the price you have to pay. Be careful what you sign up for in the dead of night. Thanks for watching my story. If you enjoy tales that explore the darker side of things, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You never know what's waiting in the shadows. Stay safe out there.